Got it.
I want to pull up and make sure everybody's in here that said they were going to be in here.
Okay.
Oh no.
Okay, so it is recording officially.
Hold on. I just lost my whole screen.
Well, you lost what I was sharing.
Oh wait, yep, there I am.
That was
Okay. Sorry. Let's see. Yeah. So I think everybody's in.
okay. Hang on.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, my system is completely locked up. Which has never happened to me before. Never say never.
I know, right? I want to check my email one more time to make sure nobody's come through at the last minute wanting to be part of it today.
All right, so that's not what I want to do.
Yep, I think I got everybody.
Okay. Let me see. I will upload the document just in case someone doesn't have it.
Okay.
Okay. Huh, that's weird. Everything froze up on me and then it appears to be back to normal. So
Yay. Okay.
Can you see the screen?
I can, yes.
Okay. Huh.
If you go to the chat, that's where the document is that she just uploaded. I'm just telling your participants where the document is.
I'm trying to hear the right thing. There it is. Okay. All right, so I have, what, 6 participants? Is that right? You had mentioned there were maybe 6?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, about that. And then yep. So, and then somebody wanted it after the fact. That's why we need to record it.
And does it show recording? Yep, it should be recording.
Okay.
Now my only options are to pause or to stop recording. So.
Okay, yeah, it doesn't show me that you're recording, but.
Okay, it looks on my end like I am, so.
Okay, perfect. All right.
And it's 9:02. We ready to get started?
That's fine.
Okay, all right. Well, good morning. My name is Brenda Craner, and I'm going to be the facilitator for today's session, where we're going to talk about creating a culture of engagement. And I'll do what I can to engage you while you're here in the Zoom classroom setting. And just to start off with that, if everybody could just, and even whether you have your cameras on or not, just tell me who you are, what you do, and kind of why you signed up for this or what you're looking to gain from this. Because from what I understand, Jody, we're here till about noon, right? Or a little bit shy of that. So, okay. So I don't know who wants to go. If I go down the list of people on the participants, it looks like Randy would be first.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Randy Bishop. I'm the administrator of Benhams Grove for the city of Centerville. We are a rental facility owned by the city. We do weddings and business meetings, parties, etc. I have a small staff. We only have a staff of about 7 or 8 people, but we are part of the blanket under the city of Centerville. And I'm here today to learn more about engaging my employees and making them active participants and giving them their responsibilities and their accountabilities.
Awesome. Great. I love Benhams Grove. We used to have a Christmas party there for kids every year.
Awesome.
Yeah. Until they got too old to care. Okay. All right. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. And then I have an Anthony.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. I'm Anthony Bizzaro. I'm the fire chief for the city of Bellbrook.
Okay.
Been newly appointed to that position at the beginning of the year. The big thing for me is just engaging the employees and trying to create a culture within the fire department that people want to be involved with.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you. And then Josh? Looks like Josh's microphone's open, but maybe he stepped away. All right. What about, I get MVCC. Is that you, Jody?
Yes, does it say MVCC engineering?
It does.
Yeah, that's me.
You're just coordinating.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jody, and I'm the training coordinator at MVCC, putting this together, working with Brenda. Glad you all joined us today. And also, if you have any training topics that you would be interested in, please shoot me an email. I'm going to start training for the second half into the year here soon. So let me know what your needs are. But thanks for being with us.
And Renee?
Hi, my name is Renee, and I am a firefighter paramedic with the city of Bellbrook.
Awesome. Okay, so the two of you are from Bellbrook. Awesome. And then Tiffany. We can't.
Okay, can you hear me? All right, my name's Tiffany Dokes, and I work for the City of Moraine with the Parks and Recreation Department. I am a program coordinator, and I just would love to be able to engage employees and the community to help build a good relationship and just engaging others. So
Awesome. And then Josh, are you with us yet by chance to introduce yourself?
He said his mic wasn't working.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. All good. That's why we have a chat box. So, oh, I see it. Now I see it in the chat box. Mic is not working. Bear with me. Okay. So at any point in time, I'll do the best I can to monitor the chat box. But just let me know if you have any questions or thoughts or comments. Just put them there in the chat box. So like I mentioned, my name is Brenda Craner. I direct the organizational leadership program at Wright State. I'm also a senior lecturer. I have been consulting with organizations for over 25 years on the topic of employee and leadership development. And as I started to study employee engagement, I realized this is a lot of the material that I've been teaching for years with organizations, worked with large and small organizations, private, public, union, non-union, you name it. And a lot of the principles and the things that I'll be talking about with employee engagement, what I like about it is it's transferable across all industries. So whether you're working in banking and service and retail and municipality settings, what have you, the principles apply. They will not all work for all of your situations, and engagement is a huge umbrella. I'm going to introduce you to the pieces I know. I've done a lot of research on engagement, and right now I'm doing some research on engagement given the pandemic. How does that look different? And there are not that many answers yet, so we're all kind of in the middle of doing some research with that. So we'll address some of that as we go through this too. So if you can get rid of distractions, it's not always possible. Whenever you can, your video, I certainly welcome the video because it gives me a little bit of interaction and I can kind of read your nonverbals as to, okay, Brenda, you're boring us, or okay, let's pick it up, or wait a minute, I'm confused. So you can get rid of distractions, that's great. What I'm hoping we're going to accomplish today is how do you recognize an engaged employee? What are some things you look for? And it doesn't necessarily mean they're walking around bouncing off walls with a smile on their face, okay? So there are other things that constitute engagement. And then we're going to look at what are the psychological conditions that should exist in order for engagement to occur. Fancy word, psychological, brain mumbo jumbo. That's not what we're talking about. I'm going to give you some specifics of how you can recognize the psychological conditions. And then third, what are some actions that you could potentially take that could increase engagement in your environment? And we're going to look at engagement. Engagement in isolation isn't, or looking at implementing practices in isolation might not be as effective as looking at it from a systemic perspective. So what that means is when we talk about the different psychological conditions of engagement, we're going to look at what you as an individual could do. Let's say you're not engaged and you're not in a management position. You know, what can you do? Secondly, what is the manager's role in creating this environment? And then finally, what can the organization do from a systemic perspective to create the expectation and the accountability for engagement to occur? So these are just things I want you to think about. I'm not going to say we actually jump on them in very much detail, but we will be talking about them. Okay, so if you look on the very top of your screen, it depends on if it's at the top, at the bottom, you'll see a word that says annotate with a pen or pencil on it. It says annotate. You can click on that. When you click on annotate, then you can click on draw. And when you click on draw, you have a color, and then you can actually take your mouse and circle one of the emojis that I have here. So for example, so if I put you in the situation of it's Sunday evening, or let's say it's, if you don't work that type of schedule, right? It's right before you have to go back to work and you've had some time off. How are you feeling about going back to work? Are you excited? Are you looking forward to interesting and meaningful work? Or do you dread the start of a long work week? So you can have excited, you can have happy, you could have, you never know what you're going to get, surprised. So go ahead and annotate, just circles. I've got somebody said that they would be excited going back to work. Some people could be worried about going back to work. And sometimes it depends on what you have planned that week. That's the other thing about employee engagement. It is not steady. So if I say I have an engaged, for the most part, I have an engaged workforce that works with me. That doesn't mean on Tuesday, somebody couldn't come in a little disconnected to what they have to get done for that day. So engagement does sometimes travel a wave, but you just need to monitor how are people feeling. Is something not normal with a colleague or with an employee, or even perhaps your boss, to check in and say, how's it going? Is everything okay? Do you need anything? But if it becomes a consistent lack of engagement, then you may have bigger challenges that you're facing in the workplace. So we've got some worried, we have some excited. I'm going to go ahead and clear all the drawings, and I've got to get out of here. So many things to think about. Okay. All right, so if you were to Google, I just did this through Wright State's Library maybe a couple years ago, I think, but you go in and you Google employee engagement, what do you get? You will get hundreds of thousands of different hits, different articles, academic journals. You can get something in Inc. magazine, Forbes magazine, what have you, that will talk about employee engagement. So there are a number of different ways to look at it. Engagement research, Gallup, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Gallup poll. They do lots of surveys in the workforce, and typically across the board. These studies for employee engagement tend to deal with a variety of industries. So for many years, Gallup has captured engagement data, and it's revealed approximately 33% of employees are engaged. 33% of employees are engaged. Wow, is that it, right? And over 50%, numbers now are up to 60, but I just like 50 because that's kind of been across the board over the past years, decade or so. Over 50% of US employees are actively looking for another job. And then actively disengaged, which is different than not disengaged. Actively disengaged are people who come into work and don't even do the bare minimum. Absenteeism, they call in sick. When they're there, they're not necessarily working on a task. They cost the United States, from an employment standpoint, up to $600 billion annually. Now, how they gather this information, it's a result of self-reporting data from organizations. They send the information in, and then Gallup calculates and comes up with a dollar figure associated with poor productivity. So one of the things that I've been interested in is, okay, so what about the pandemic? What's happened? How has that impacted engagement? Well, as of May 2020, last year, engagement was higher across the United States employee base than it has been in the past decade. So it was up to 38% engagement, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a lot compared to 32, 33 to 38. So following, however, it was interesting, and some of this data has been collected following the killing of George Floyd. Obviously, there was a lot of unrest going on within the community. With the protests and riots, engagement plummeted to 31%. But what Gallup did in their study is they broke down where did it primarily fall. And here you'll see, and I would say not surprisingly, people in managerial and leadership positions plummeted. Part of that became, we don't know what to do with what's going on in our organizations. We don't know what to do with how what's happening outside of our organizations is impacting us and our employees. At least that was some of the narrative from the study. And then others who felt more affected by the killings and the riots, and actually political party played a role in the level of engagement. So engagement is reflected in an organization. There's so much more than just what's happening within your sphere of influence, as Stephen Covey would say, but actually looking at things outside of what goes on in an employee's life actually do come to play in the workplace. And a lot of engagement research talks about that. Engagement numbers tend to be lower, not just in that recent study, but lower in blue collar workers, often because their ability to have a say in how their job gets done is more minimal as opposed to people in service or particularly white collar jobs. So, and then I thought it was interesting too, engagement was lower for employees who had to show up and be present at work than it was for people who were home. And I thought that was quite telling too. And then one of the studies I'm working on right now is the perception of certainty and safety in the workplace and how that affects engagement. So the concerns of not knowing what was going on with the virus, all of that, people felt they were more at risk, in some cases going to work, and then they were worried about that, so their engagement went down. So those are just some interesting numbers to kind of start the conversation surrounding engagement. Anybody have any comments, thoughts, anything they want to share or mention or related to that? Okay, and you can always put your hand up as well in the on the side where you're next to your participant button. You can put your hand up. All right, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to show you, it's about a 5-minute video. And if you look at the front page, your first page of your handout, it's got notes related to the video. It's about 5 minutes. There's just music in the background, so a lot of it is reading. You'll be looking at the numbers and the different things that this video shares. So all I'm going to do is ask that you write just a couple thoughts you have, and then after the video, we'll have a conversation about what are some things that kind of stood out to you, that struck you in the video. So just give me a second to get the video going. Let's see, optimize the video clip. This is it. everybody back with me? Hopefully. Can somebody hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome.
Yes.
I have lost. Okay, so what are some things that resonated with you? Things that came out and made you think,
So I have one question, and that was, how do the disengaged employees cost the company billions?
well, so absenteeism. So how do you measure how you make money in an organization? So absenteeism is one of the costs. Not doing their job 100% is part of the cost. Turnover is part of the cost. What are some other things you think about when you're talking about money and cost in an organization? Give me some other use of equipment, using it the best. What are some other ways you might be measuring costs associated with your organization? I got some others on top of my customer scores. Part of one of the things the video talked about was if your manager is engaged, the employees are more likely to be engaged. And when I talk about customer service, if people are taken care of inside their organization, they're more likely to take care of the customer, which increases taxes potentially being passed because of the favorable perception of the people who take care of the community. So I don't know. I mean, we could go. I mean, what are some other ways you think that a disengaged employee would cost an organization money? I'm open to. I mean, what are some other disengagement?
It could hurt our view of in the community, which would make them not want to utilize us.
Right. I don't know why my slides are acting up. Right. I mean, those are good thoughts. And I kind of look at Gallup sometimes. I'm like, how do you come up with these numbers, right? But that's what they look at: sales. They look at the cost of the turnover, the absenteeism, customer service scores. Another one that they look at is new products and new services. Are you able to innovate and be creative and come up with something that actually makes the customer happier, that they're more likely to purchase? Or a service that you could provide. If you're not engaged, an employee is less likely to put their heads together with other people and brainstorm and come up with better ideas and solutions to problems. So, and to be quite honest, I think it's going to be different for every organization how they measure that. And that goes to when we talk about measuring employee engagement. How do you measure it? And it may be different and for different organizations. What else struck you about the video?
I like that it brought up all the different generations.
Okay. She didn't talk that much about it, but it did say it's important to leverage the different generations for sure. What about the creativity piece? Do you remember that one toward the end?
Where it said 5-year-olds are more creative than any adult can be.
Yeah, correct. Any ideas behind that, why that might be the case?
Because they're complacent and they're bored and they have no desire to be adventurous.
Okay, that could be. And any reason why you think that might happen? Why that might be the case?
There's no goals for them to achieve. They're stuck where they are.
I mean, that could be part of it. And when we talk about engagement, some of it is part of engagement is that an individual believes that their organization is investing in their development, which means paying attention to their progress toward goals. Sometimes too, they've been in environments that their hands have been slapped if for whatever reason they came up with an idea, or an idea wasn't implemented and therefore they kind of gave up and said, why should I bother, right? Whereas if you're a 5-year-old in the kindergarten class and somebody says, hey, draw an elephant, 95% of those kids are going to grab a pen and go for it. But if you were to ask adults, one is they're going to be like, why? I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that. What's the purpose? And if I don't do it well, that's not going to reflect positively on me. What about the 35%, or it said 33% in this video, of employees are willing to forego a pay raise to see their direct boss fired? What were your reactions to that one?
I'm going to call that a lie.
Yeah, I don't know. The number one reason people choose to leave an organization is because they're not happy with the relationship they have with their boss. So I would think too that 35% or that 33% might be people who are already not happy in their organization to forego the pay raise, or that they're already up to par in terms of their equality of pay. So the raise wouldn't necessarily offset the relationship they have with their boss. So what else? What other things about the video stood out to you?
I just thought it was interesting how it affects so many employees when your boss is disengaged.
Okay, what they mentioned, the video or Gallup per se mentioned 3 times.
I think so.
Right. So that talks a little bit more about the importance of modeling the way, leading by example.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Anything else? Talked about the positive effect of profit, sales, and productivity. What about where it says 40% of disengaged employees don't plan on going anywhere? What does that mean? How does that affect an organization?
That's sad because that's just going to bring down the organization. And you would think that if people if people are disengaged in their job, that they would want to move on, but they're actually just content where they are. And so they stay.
Yeah, and if you think about the video of the crew of the rowing the boat, so you think you've got a handful, and I call them the change agents, the ones that are in front really trying to row the boat, and then you've got the majority of the population. They're kind of hanging out, going along for the ride. They show up, they do the basics, but if you looked at the video, a lot about engagement is about getting the discretionary effort, getting, and we're going to talk the head, heart, and the feet engaged in doing the work that needs to be done. So let me go back to sharing the screen. Okay, so some other aspects related to engagement. When employees are not, and this to me is common sense, but these are other study results and practices, that when employees are involved in work decisions that directly affect them, they're more likely to be engaged. Whereas if decisions are made and they're not being consulted when possible, they can feel powerless, and their commitment to getting the work done could decrease. And it does say may, because this isn't necessarily the case for all employees. So that's the other aspect of this. When we talk about some of the ideas for creating a sense of meaningfulness and in their job, it's not going to be the same for everyone. Here, employees, it also talks about how employees can become disengaged if what they end up doing is not reflective of the employment deal. What that means is when you are hired on, you're told this is going to happen and you're going to be part of this and part of that, and this is how you're going to grow. And then when it doesn't become the reality, you begin to experience disengagement, or you can. This is probably one of the most powerful aspects to me in many studies, is that a sense of calling to a job and a sense of meaningfulness outweigh the frustration an employee feels with the work environment. So what that means, the work environment can be where I have to go to work, could be the people I work with, the boss I report to, or the greater organization of where I work. But my task and what I have to do is more important to me than all of those other factors. So when I did my dissertation 2 years ago, what my study showed was people were engaged based on the job they were doing, even if they didn't have a strong coworker relationship, or if they didn't necessarily have the greatest managerial situation. So part of my conversation then becomes, how do you create a sense of meaningfulness that really outweighs some of the other aspects of the job in the workplace? And we'll address that a little bit too. And when people don't believe their strengths are used, their motivation can suffer and their productivity can decline. Meaning, if I know I'm really good at doing something, but I'm always skipped over for doing that, then I could potentially lose motivation. It doesn't mean I have to do that 95% of my job description, but as long as I get to play to my strengths in some aspect of my job, I'm more inclined to be engaged and less inclined to lose motivation and experience a loss in productivity. Anybody have any thoughts on those ideas that I just shared? The playing to the strengths, the sense of calling and meaningfulness in your job. Does that kind of seem like common sense, or is anything like enlightening? Is that the word I want to use?
So you said that people are typically happy when they have a sense of calling and a sense of meaningfulness in their jobs. I mean, talking from the fire department specifically, because that's my job. Like, how do you get somebody to see a sense of meaningfulness in what they're doing if they don't already? Because we have a pretty powerful job.
Yeah. I mean, life-saving. Correct. Well, then to what degree would you say your employees are engaged? Based on, we haven't really even talked about like how to recognize engagement, but because sense of meaningfulness is just one part of it. We also have, and we're going to talk psychological safety. Psychological safety is, do I feel like the people I work with and the boss I report to has my back? And there are a lot of other aspects to has my back. And then what about my psychological availability, which is, to what degree do I feel like I have the knowledge? Do I have the skills? Do I have the emotional capacity to do my job? So maybe not knowing as much about, I mean, never being in the fire department before, I'm not sure how all three of those measure out. So maybe from your perspective, the sense of meaningfulness is already high, but maybe the other two areas of employee engagement could be, if you don't feel you have an engaged team as much, those may be some areas you would want to pay more attention to as we talk about engagement. So, and those are great questions, because like I said toward the beginning, this is going to look different for all of you based on what your job is and what role people have in the organization where you are. So I'm going to go back to sharing the screen, and we're going to look at the definition. So if we look at, this is one of the many academic definitions. I'm only going to do this one. This is, William Kahn is, if you want to say, the father of engagement. He kind of took the concept, and studies in the past 20 years have built on his basic, if we want to call it, framework. So he pretty much states that personal engagement is when someone is employed in their job and express their preferred self, meaning I can be who I am when I come to work and I connect with others at work. I feel like I'm all there with my head, heart, and my feet, and I can really do my job to my fullest potential. So that's the technical, or if you want to say academic, definition of engagement. I look at engagement as when an employee brings their head, heart, and their feet. And part of Kahn's model is based on the knowledge, based on the emotions that are part of your job, and based on actually doing your job, full performance of your job. And it also talks about how employees are emotionally connected to not only their job, but their team and their organization for engagement to actually occur. Now, there's a difference between, and I think I heard the word happy. An engaged employee doesn't necessarily, yes, they're happy, they feel like they're filling a greater purpose, but they might not always come in, like I said, cheerful and bouncing off the wall. That's more reflective of a personality style per se. But when we're looking at engaged, they're actually they're absorbed in their job, which is another way we're going to look at it. So engaged employees they have a profound connection to their job in the company. And here's just a visual. Yeah, they're high-fiving. So there's a sense of camaraderie, and they drive innovation in the organization. They come up with better ways to do things because they're excited and they're passionate. This is anywhere from 33 to 35% of people in the workforce. These are the middle people. They show up, they're just sitting on the boat. They're not helping paddle. They're not doing as much. Sometimes they're sleepwalking through the day. Sometimes they show up great for a meeting. Sometimes they don't necessarily participate. And then you've got the actively disengaged, that they're not just unhappy, but they're actually doing what they can to undermine what's going on in the organization. This can be recognized by not sharing information, withholding information, sometimes even sharing inaccurate information. So those are the three different types. So now let's look at how do you actually recognize an engaged employee. So in your handout on, I want to say it's the third or fourth page, you'll see these 12 items listed. If you look at the 12 items, this is how you can recognize an engaged employee. And there are a couple other instruments that are available, but this is one that supports Kahn's model and some other studies. So you're going to recognize an engaged employee. So as you look at this list, think about the people you work with. So whether you're in a managerial position, whether you're a team member that has coworkers you're working with. And so how would you answer this question, or how would you answer it for other people? Do you believe that people are focused when they are working? So give me some thoughts. How would you recognize a focused employee in your organization? How would you recognize a focused employee? What would they look like?
Someone who gives lots of feedback.
Okay, so they're focused on what's happening. They want to know, they want to be involved. Okay, someone who gives feedback. What else?
They have a pleasant attitude when they come to work. They're happy when they get here.
Okay, that could be because they're focused, they're ready to go.
They're
Someone that
enthusiastic. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say someone that volunteers to help, like when someone needs it.
Okay. All right. So we've got volunteered, we've got giving feedback, we've got ready to go, enthusiastic. What about concentrating on their job when they're working? How do you recognize someone who's concentrating versus not?
They're engaged.
So behaviorally, what does that look like? They're focused, they're not distracted.
I'm gonna
Like
say
not on-
focused, willing to help.
Okay.
Not on their cell phone.
That's what I was looking for, right? The cell phone, distracted. I give my job responsibility a lot of attention. How would you recognize that?
They submit a quality end product.
Okay, good. They're concerned about quality, follow through. They stay on top of their tasks at a certain time. And when working, I'm focused on my job. So one is I'm focused when working. When I'm actually in working, I'm really focused. What about number 5? Working for my current organization has a great deal of personal meaning for me. How would you recognize an employee feels that way?
I guess when someone is given a task and you can see that they're going above and beyond.
Okay. Okay.
You can see that they have buy-in and that they're willing, at least in the community service side of it, they're willing to put in the extra mile and help out.
Okay. Well, how would you recognize a strong sense of belonging to the job?
They're willing to come in on off times, especially for us, be able to stay over, come in early, assist other crews when they can.
Yeah, and the assisting other crews is part of the sense of belongingness as well, because they're willing to help out. help out others and coworkers. Belief in the mission and the purpose of the organization. Sometimes this is evidenced in that they'll mention how what they're doing, they feel like they're adding value to the purpose of the organization. So they could actually mention it. It could be mentioned. But actually when they verbalize it, or not necessarily verbalize specifically, but in their words, it's obvious they're clear on the bigger picture and why they're here. What about the I care about the future of the organization? How would you recognize that?
Continuing education.
Perfect. Okay. What about pushing themselves?
Signing up for extra trainings like today.
I'll assume you're engaged. Extra effort without being asked. Number 11, above and beyond expected of me to help my team be successful. And I work harder than expected to help my organization be successful. So these are some of this is how engagement is traditionally measured. And there are a couple other instruments. One of them discusses the rigor in which people do their job, the dedication and the absorption. So when people come in, are they really focused? Are they there? Are they looking to better themselves, better how the task gets done, and contribute to the team and to the overall mission of the organization? How would you recognize a disengaged employee? Not looking at this list, what are some behaviors that would demonstrate a disengaged employee?
I'd say showing up late or not prepared.
Okay,
Getting the same
Absenteeism.
excuses as why things aren't getting completed.
that never happens, does it?
No.
Absenteeism.
Yeah, absenteeism, not being prepared. And, and that costs if people show up to a meeting and they haven't done their part. Then they haven't done their part, and then people don't have the information they need, and you've lost an hour of everyone's productivity to be there to go back and try to do it again. So these are things that cost an organization money from a standpoint of someone who's disengaged. Now, could they have shown up unprepared because they didn't know they were supposed to be prepared? Okay, there's always an outlier, but across the board, how are people showing up? Are people placing blame? Are people taking responsibility? Are they holding themselves accountable? So what are some things that looks like? This next one, let's see, if we look to the next list, it's got the Gallup, if you'll see the Gallup engagement hierarchy. So that the actual 12 questions are to the right of the other list that you had. But if you go back to page 2 of your handout, it breaks down each one of these. So while I had said the questions we just reviewed are how you recognized an engaged employee, these are 12, they call them antecedents, or conditions that could positively impact an employee's level of engagement. So if we look, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is kind of written in the same manner, meaning the 2 statements on the bottom create the foundation for engagement, meaning they are pretty critical that if the 2 on the bottom aren't satisfied, then it's going to be difficult to get to the top of the pyramid. So the first 2 statements on this list are related to what do I get? So what are my basic needs? So when I show up for a job and I've been hired, I'm so excited, right? New job, exciting. You've got that honeymoon phase of 6 months. Do I know what's expected of me? So if you look at this handout at page 2, I talk a little bit about what that question means. And these are study figures from Gallup, but I kind of just look at them from a generalized perspective that people want to know how they're going to be held accountable at work. How is their success going to be measured? I often look at it, it's kind of hard to hold a kid accountable. And I remember doing this when my kids were little, now they're all old, but clarifying expectations. Hey, when we go in the grocery store, this is what's expected. And then I can hold them accountable for that. And I can encourage them within those parameters. But if expectations aren't shared, they go in and they figure it's a free for all. So, or they're confused or they're undisciplined, right? They can't stay focused. But if people are very clear on what to expect and how their success is going to be measured, they're more likely to stay focused and move in that direction. I used to use a Dilbert cartoon back in the days when we had the overhead projectors and I'd blow up cartoons, where Dilbert kept asking his boss, how will I know if I got it right? How will I know if I got it right? And his boss said, don't worry about it. I'll let you know when you don't, which creates a very disengaged workforce. It's kind of like, well, I guess I'll figure it out. If I don't hear anything, I guess it's pretty good. So here you've got some percentages that if this can be increased, people feel as though they know what's expected of them. There could be a 22% reduction in turnover. People are less likely to leave if they feel they're doing things well. 29% reduction in safety incidents. So what's interesting is you'll see through these numbers that rates of safety incidents actually they decrease when employees are engaged. So if you go back to that initial list, if you're focused on your job, if you're paying attention, if these things are happening, you're less likely to have accidents or misinformation to occur. Safety incidents. Oh, and then the third one for that first question is that you could potentially get a 10% increase in productivity because people know what's expected of them. The second one, which is actually quite an interesting one, is from my perspective, is do people have the materials and equipment they need to do their job? And out of all the 12 indicators, this is the greatest indicator of job stress. Meaning, if I don't have what I need to do my job, I don't want to say have a panic attack, but it can increase the stress level at work. If I don't have a computer that's operable, if I don't have safety equipment to do my job, if I don't have the knowledge and the information I need to do my job, it can become very frustrating to me. So those are my basic needs as an employee going in. Do I have what I need? Do I know what I need to know in order to do my job? How am I going to be held accountable? What's expected from me? And can I do it? So those are the two statements related to basic needs. Any reactions to those? Make sense? Interesting? Any thoughts related to those two? Okay. So if we continue up the pyramid, you've got leadership support, or what do I give? Meaning, do I have an opportunity? This next question is, do I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day? So if you go back to one of my earlier comments, people tend to be more engaged when they feel as though their strengths are being utilized. So here, do I get to do what I do best every day? So if you look at that handout on page 2, if this is improved, you could realize a 30% reduction in turnover, 36% reduction in safety incidents. Profitability could go up by 11% if people have an opportunity to do what they do best every day. To me, a real significant one here is the reduction in turnover. Is people are more likely to stay if they feel they get to do what they do best every day. After all, who doesn't want to feel successful at the end of the day? Question 2, this goes back to recognition. I have received recognition the last 7 days. What's interesting about this one is, even though it says leadership support, this recognition doesn't have to come from your boss alone. It can come from coworkers. It can come from citizens, the community. Anything that gives you feedback that says, yes, I was able to bring my best self to work. I was able to do the job, and somebody actually noticed and paid attention. So in this respect, if it goes up, you could experience a 31% reduction in absenteeism, which is great. So I come into work, I get to do what I do best every day, and people actually notice. I'm more likely to stay and give my best. Question number 5, my supervisor or someone at work cares for me. This is the empathy one. You go back to the video. Empathy is not about feeling sorry for people. It's about recognizing, yes, people are having a hard time figuring out how to juggle the kids, the pandemic, and work. And yes, it's challenging. How can we best support you in your role here within our city? What can we do? How can we work together? If an employee feels that someone at work cares about them, safety incidents that could be up to 46% reduction just because someone's more empathetic and cares. So I will sometimes get the argument that people get a paycheck. That's recognition enough. I'm confused. Yes, paychecks are certainly valid. I mean, obviously we do work because we need money to maintain a certain level of living. At the same time, people do bring their emotions to work. They are, to an extent, ego involved in their job. So the emotions, there is a connection there with the work that you do and the people you work with. So empathy is essentially recognizing, yep, I can appreciate where you're coming from. I'm attempting to put myself in your shoes. However, it's not giving people the opportunity to not be held accountable. So there's that fine balance of, yes, I can appreciate and I understand your frustration, and at the same time, we need X, Y, and Z to be accomplished. How do you suggest we make that happen in a way that works for all of us? Can't always be done, but at least the attempt of empathy and understanding goes a long way. Let's see, what's the next one? Number 6. So someone encourages my development. This is the other piece. So when we talk about engagement, it's not just you get a job and you want everyone to be happy. It's also, let's look at your career. Where do you want to go? How do you want to advance? How are you developing, and how can I contribute more? So Gallup data shows that a lack of development and career growth is one of the reasons employees choose to leave their job. They don't feel like they're challenged. They don't feel like they're growing and it doesn't necessarily mean a promotion, because some people are like, we're too thin on promotions. We don't have enough levels. But there are ways to develop employees. I call it keepable promises. You give people additional certificates, additional training, and they're willing to take it. That contributes to their development. It also says you care about their growth. It says a number of those things within that hierarchy. So comments up to now, where are we? We're at number 6. We got through half of them. Comments so far, or thoughts that you have related to any of these measures? Okay, so the next aspect is the do I belong piece. And this is where you sometimes look at teamwork. I think all of you have the grid on the top of it, your page too. So then you're looking at work, my opinions seem to count. So if my opinions seem to count, I'm more likely to give them, right? And then I'm more likely to be engaged, and then productivity and innovation could go up because we're all sharing ideas. So there are some of the numbers associated with turnover, safety, and productivity on that page 3. Number 8 is, I believe in the mission and the purpose of the organization. One of the things, and I'm sure all of you have seen Wright State in the news pretty much daily. I didn't look at the newspaper this morning, but when I look at the mission and the purpose of Wright State, I try to stay focused in my lane. I consider we work to transform the lives of the students and the communities we serve. So as long as I'm working with students and I feel like I'm helping them become better, stronger, more capable leaders to give back to the community, I'm feeling that sense of meaningfulness in my job and my connection to the mission, regardless of some of the other things going on and the concerns for employment, quite honestly. So some of those things are creating a challenge to focus, right? But knowing that I'm committed to the mission and the purpose helps. So I feel like I belong from that standpoint. 9 is coworkers committed to quality. So this one I think is quite interesting. To to what degree, so does it, okay, so let me ask this question. So does it really matter if your coworkers do quality work as long as you're doing quality work? Does it matter
It takes a team.
to realize the goals and success? Okay. So, but what if the person next to me only gives 10% and I'm giving, 110? Why would that matter?
Well, then either the job is not going to be done as efficient as it could be, or I'm going to be having to do double the work to make up for what they're not doing.
Exactly. Which is going to make you feel
Terrible and really annoyed.
irritated.
Angry.
Right, exactly. So eventually that's going to add stress to the teamwork, right? The camaraderie piece. So here talks about additionally, the performance of a team stands to increase 30%. This is what they actually have numbers that they say 30 to 50% a team's performance can increase when the person that's the poor performer is removed from the team. And I guess you can call them a social loafer, what have you. And there are a lot of reasons, either management or supervision's not comfortable holding them accountable. They have some informal power, but at the end of the day, their remaining on the team, not doing quality work, contributes to poor performance for that team. So, because as you said, it takes a team to achieve the goals. So, and, let's see, turnover, absent net profit. Yeah, so the biggest one to me is that holding people accountable. So having coworkers committed to quality is one of the precursors to engagement. Okay, this one, number 10, I don't know. Everyone struggles with this one, is that I have a best friend at work. So do you have to work with your best friend? No, but is it important for you to have at least a person at work you have a strong relationship, you value, you can share concerns with, you can share ideas with? The idea behind this one is if you have people that you have a positive relationship with, you're more likely to feel as though you have to perform because you don't want to let them down. So if I don't have any good relationships at work, I'm less likely to feel obligated to do anything. But if I have at least one person at work I feel a connection to, I have a trustworthy relationship with, I'm more likely to perform because I don't want to let them down. That's the premise behind that. Gallup will not change the wording on it, even though a lot of people have said maybe it needs to be trusted confidant, and they've pretty much stayed true to the best friend concept at work. So that's the team part. So if you look at the model, you've got everything from your basic needs, what's expected, and do I have what I need to do my job, all the way through up to support teamwork. And then the final top of the pyramid is progress and opportunities to learn and grow. So if you look at the last 6 months, someone at work has talked to me about my progress. So that's more than just an annual review. So every once in a while, companies will say, well, every 1 to 3 years, we do a review of employees and they set some goals. But we don't revisit those goals again until we get back in the same space and we're having a conversation about the goals. But there's no conversation throughout the year regarding that goal achievement and what you need in order to get closer to it. So if someone in the last 6 months had talked to you about your progress, if you can increase that, organizations could realize 38% fewer safety incidents. Once again, absenteeism would go down. By almost 30%, absenteeism would go down because people feel as though you care about their development. The last one is opportunities to learn and grow. Organizations, up to 40% of people would be less likely to not show up, or maybe even show up but not be present, right? Because they feel someone has contributed to their growth and their development. So if you're to look at this list, out of all of them, go back and share the screen. Out of all of them, for you personally, just out of curiosity, which one is most important to you? And you could put it in the chat box too. You were to pick one that you think's most important for you.
Do I belong?
Okay.
What do I give?
Okay. So do people utilize your skill and your expertise? Are you able to contribute? Do I fit? What about growth? Anyone in particular interested in the growth aspect?
I would say you need to be comfortable in your current situation first.
Which you just supported the pyramid, right? The concept of, am I comfortable with what I'm getting? Do I know what's expected? Am I able to deliver? And then, okay, so now that we've got this, now let's see, how can I grow? How can I continue to contribute more? So these are some, and I look at these 12 as these are things you can potentially impact in the workplace. Even if it's to better clarify expectations, to ensure people have what they need within reason, obviously. Or if people can't have the equipment or the materials they need, figure out what are other solutions that fit within a budget, or at least having the conversation. People are more likely to accept their current situation if they believe that they have been heard, even if their idea isn't implemented. If they believe they've been heard, it's been given some type of time or processing, and then people have gotten back to them, rather than an idea has been suggested and it was never implemented. Hence why suggestion boxes can be negative, because oftentimes people don't get feedback. Their idea goes in a black box and it really goes no further than that. So yeah.
Back to number 4 there, question number 4.
Yeah.
Recognition. Is that, and I don't want to sound mean or disrespectful here, but is this more than everybody getting a trophy at the end of the day or a participation ribbon? Because sometimes I feel that some of the members, that's what they're looking for. And being an older guy, it's hard for me to do that when the work that's being done is average, if you will.
Right. Yeah. So when I talk about recognition, I use it's the sail analogy. S is situation. What is it? A is action, I is impact, and L is link. So what that means is, if someone, this goes beyond the trophy. So I'm not an advocate of everyone gets a participation ribbon at all. That's my personal belief. However, when you recognize people, as opposed to just saying, hey, Jody did a great job, you would indicate the situation. Jody stepped up in XYZ situation. This is what she did. This is the impact it had on the results that we needed. And this is how it links to the mission of the organization. You don't have to necessarily say the situation, the action, the impact, and the link, but you're recognizing the specific behavior that this individual demonstrated that caused them to be recognized. So not just that you showed up at work today, you showed up 5 days. There are organizations that pay a bonus, manufacturing primarily right now. They will pay a $50 bonus. I mean, I've even heard in some plans up to $200 a week if you show up on time, work your same shift for five days in a row. So, and I'm like, you got to be making that up. No, that's the reality to get people to, and I'm not even sure if it's even working today, but a year ago, I knew that those were some motivations. So the recognition is to be specific with the recognition. That way people know what behavior is important. If I just say, way to go, great job, nobody really knows what that means. So following that guideline can help you put into perspective what behavior actually makes a difference for your team in your organization. And that could be even helping a team member out. When you came in extra hours or off the job, or you went away around your route to help somebody else, that made a big difference. Does that help?
Absolutely. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Any other comments about those. Let's do this. Why don't we take about a 10-minute break, and we'll come back, and then I'm probably going to be throwing in a couple breakout rooms to come up with some ideas and suggestions for different parts of the model, which I'll be introducing. So why don't we come back? What is it? Why don't we come back at about 10 minutes exactly? Let's come back at 10:20. Is that good? I'll say 10:20. There we go. 10:20 start up again. Does that work? Everybody give me a thumbs up if that works.
Works.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Brenda.
Yeah.
The Word file, we were able to download that to keep that on
Yeah.
our computer.
Yeah.
So we can, because I don't write really fast, so I'm trying to keep up here, and it's just like,
No.
so I just want to make sure that I have the information that I can share with my employees and work with them on this. So
You
trying
have
to
the
make sure I
file.
have it.
You have the file?
Yeah, I've got it here, and I think it did download. So
Perfect. Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome to do that. You bet. Recording. So now it's recording again. Okay.
That's what I'll do is pull them out.
Brenda? Hey, it's Jody. Now what am I doing in my room?
Nothing.
Oh.
Nothing yet. Nobody goes to breakout room yet. So apparently you all, because Randy brought it my attention, you can see the breakout room, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
But you don't need to go to it yet.
Oh, okay. Well, let me go back out.
Well, you're out. I think I kicked you back in. I kind of kicked you out. Didn't I? Because you're in the main room now, right?
Yeah, I'm back in the, yeah,
I think everybody, it doesn't look like anyone is in the breakout room yet. So
How does the breakout room work?
when we get to it, what'll happen is you'll be able to join, and I broke you into 2 different groups. So when I send you to the breakout room, all you'll have to do is join it, and it'll automatically pop you into that room.
Okay.
And then you can join the main room, or typically what I'll do is I'll bring you back, and then I'll broadcast an announcement to both groups, and it'll say you have 1 minute to wrap up your discussion. And then it'll bring you back in, or you can come back in. Typically I bring you back in, and it gives you like a 60-second countdown before it cuts you off. So far I've never had anyone like get lost.
There's always a first.
And there's always a first, right? So, all right, so let me go ahead and share with you before we do the breakout. So I had mentioned Khan initially. This is his model, and it's his theory of employee engagement. And like I said, so many other researchers have just built on this in different ways. So there are 3 psychological conditions that need to exist in order for engagement to occur. And the levels in which this happens, it just depends. So like, I think one of the questions earlier, it may have been Renee, was if firefighters have a sense of meaningfulness, that may be the highest one, and they may be off the charts with that one. But then what about the other 2 areas? So sense of meaningfulness is the first one, psychological safety is the second one, and then psychological availability is the third. So we're going to break these down. How it's going to go is I'm going to break down each one, and then after we talk about one, I'll put you in a breakout room and then have a conversation in the breakout room about how you might be able to affect an employee or an individual or a team member's sense of meaningfulness. What are some things you could do? So the sense of meaningfulness is the belief that as an individual and a contributor to my job, I actually make a difference, that I'm of value, I'm worthwhile, I'm useful, and I'm not taken for granted. So that's a lump of the, this is what sense of meaningfulness looks like. If we look a little bit further, and you have this in your handout on page 6, the top, this is a way in which sense of meaningfulness is measured. So there's 6 statements, and as when you go into your breakout group, what I'd like you to do is look at the statements and think, okay, to what degree could something happen in our workplace that could increase the chances of an individual citing this very high? Like, the work I do on this job is very meaningful to me. How might you be able to affect an individual's response to that? Yes, it is. So one of the ways is to get to understand what's important to the individual. Why are they in this role? What do they hope to gain? How does it feed their excitement or their passion for what it is they do on a daily basis? So these are just some conversations to have around sense of meaningfulness. So this is where I'm going to have you go to your breakout rooms. What do you think you can do to increase a sense of meaningfulness a coworker has that you work with, possibly employees have that you supervise, or you yourself? What could you do to increase to kind of move the needle upward on sense of meaningfulness? And when you're in your breakout room, just think about what could happen from a big level perspective, like an organizational or system-wide perspective. What could happen from just a managerial level? And then what about just an individual level? So if you can break some ideas down that way. And then what I'll do is I'll pull you back in the room, and then I'll just say, share some of your conversation. At the same time, I will be jumping into the rooms. So once you go to the room, I'll be able to jump in and make sure you don't have any questions. Also, if you have a question and I'm not in your room, you can pull yourself out to the main room and ask me a question or put it in the chat box if you're not able to keep the conversation going or what have you. All right, so I'm going to open the rooms. So you should be able to see that you've been invited to a breakout room. So go ahead and go to that breakout room. Turn your camera on. It certainly helps in the breakout room to do that. Good, everyone's there. Okay, and this time I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to pause the recording until people come back into the room. Everybody gets thrown back in. Tiffany, did you choose to come back in? Or did it
Yes, I did.
didn't know if it brought you back in. And then at one point when I was jumping into your rooms, I jumped out and then I thought I was completely out of the entire Zoom call. It's like you always run a risk when you do all this stuff.
Oh, I'm sure.
At any rate, okay, so what were some of your conversations? So in terms of what you could do to create a sense of meaningfulness, and I don't know, I guess I probably should have said appoint a spokesperson, but nothing like the last minute. So appoint a spokesperson.
Go, Tiffany. You speak well.
So I don't know. We said like it really matters for managers to be like have a sense of meaningfulness. So then that way that the employees look up to that person And then it also, for the organizational aspect of it, it really helps for everyone to be on the same plan and have a set goal or agenda for everyone.
Okay, and that way it's easier for people to see how they fit within the plan. They're not just doing something for the sake of doing it, but they feel a connection to a specific goal. Okay, good. Anything else from your group?
Just something that, we do here at the city of Centerville, from the managerial point, when we're looking about, we use key performance indicators that help us determine whether we're giving good service to the customers or not, and the evaluations we get back. At Benham's Grove, we have every event, we have an evaluation afterwards where the client tells us what we did well, what we didn't do well, if the event wasn't set up correctly. We also use our social media accounts and look for the feedback, whether it's positive or negative. And, those are some things that I am personally held responsible for every year on my performance evaluation.
Right.
Is, are my key performance indicators are they good or are they not being met? So I think that's something that helps, and it helps me feel, that I belong and I'm doing my job correctly if my evaluations and my feedback is positive as opposed to being negative.
Right, and even sharing, I think what I see people do more often than not is they share the negative reviews and what do we need to do better, and a sense of meaningfulness increases obviously when you're sharing. These are the great reviews we have, and these are letters that we've received, or these are comments. That helps people feel that connection, as well as you, obviously, because that's your accountability. So,
and a lot of times too, with those evaluations, the client will point out or specifically point out a particular individual, like the event hostess, they did a great job. They were very helpful. So we always share those with the employees so that they know, hey, they personally spoke out what a great job you did. So it's important for the individual and the staff members to know they're doing a good job and they're hearing it from the clientele and the customer.
yeah, excellent point. Excellent point. Yeah, that increases that sense of meaningfulness significantly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what about second group?
Chief, take it away.
Well, I can only speak on part of it because I missed half our group, had to take a phone call. Some of the things is just looking outside the box, empowering your employees, allowing them to handle the task, and have the full support to be able to move forward with the said project. And for me, especially just giving them my support as they move forward with that project. The one thing I was talking in our group is where I have some problems with sometimes is leading that horse to the water, but getting that horse to drink the water. And as Renee brought up in our group, I think that counts as that 40% group within our organization. They're there, they come to work, they don't cause a whole lot of problems, but they're not willing to necessarily go that extra mile to better themselves or the organization.
So I think that's not uncommon, hence the 40%, right? So the challenge there is to figure out why.
Sure.
What's the reason behind that? And too often we make assumptions as opposed to asking. So it's figuring out what's the best way to ask that doesn't make an assumption, but gets at, why wouldn't you want to develop yourself, or why wouldn't you? And whether that goes back to talking about long-term goals or growth goals, or it could have been something happened in the past when they were taken to the water and they drank it and it didn't go well for them. And
Oh, yeah.
so that's still in their back of their mind, right? In terms of, oh, I've been here, done this. No, right? So
Sure. We have some people that we had a rocky road a couple years ago, and some of those people are still here, and trying to get them to understand, hey, this is a new stream. and the water may be better than what you had before.
Yeah. And that can take some convincing, and you may be successful and then you may not. And the biggest thing there is to prevent them from negatively influencing the remaining team members.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
That becomes a challenge. And sometimes just figuring out why, because they'll be your greatest champions once they believe that the stream is going a positive direction.
Sure.
All right, so any other comments about the sense of meaningfulness? If you go back to it, the key aspects of it is that people feel that they're worthwhile, they're adding value, and they're not being taken for granted. So how to just kind of put that hat on or lens, look through that lens on occasion when you're considering, when you're looking at sense of meaningfulness. So now we're going to go on to the second aspect of Kahn's model, which is psychological safety. So this is no fear for negative consequences. And I break this down into two areas. One is from a coworker standpoint. So you'll see the questions are related to coworker relationships. We call this social support. So part of having no fear for repercussions is that I feel like my coworkers and I have a positive working relationship. It's, and I say positive, it's rewarding. Working with someone else is rewarding. My coworkers value my input. They ask for my input. They listen to what I have to say. They really know who I am. Now, they don't need to know every single thing about your world, but they know kind of what makes you tick. You know, people at work know that if Brenda's given a challenge or a new opportunity, she's going to jump on it. Now, she might overtask herself and, you know, kind of end up working longer hours, but we know she'll do it. So, so they know that about me. And they also know that if I don't want to do it and I don't like it, I probably will say, give that to someone else, right? If it's not part of what I have to do. So I believe that my coworkers appreciate who I am. They work well with me. I feel a connection with them. And, I have a team. There are 5 of us full-time that teach in the faculty, just within leadership, within the OL program. And we get along really, really well. And we also disagree very, very well, meaning we respect each other. We have mutual respect, but we respect each other enough that we listen to differences of opinions. And at the end of the day, we come out, and we all know this, with a better decision than if we hadn't had an honest dialogue about it. And then I feel a kinship with my coworkers, meaning we're all in this together, and we like enjoy what we do. We might not always agree with what administration does or how they go about doing it, but at the end of the day, we really like what we do, and each of us and what we bring to the table. I feel worthwhile when I'm around my coworkers, and I trust them. Okay, so these are basic things related to coworker relationships. The other part of psychological safety is leadership. So if you look here at this list, these are a list of behaviors that typically represent what's called transformational leadership as opposed to transactional. Transactional is I give you what you need, you turn around and you deliver a task to me. Transformational encompasses everything from being inspirational to trusting an individual for what they bring to the table, to challenging them to become better. So those are some aspects of leadership that represent transformational. So on this list, you've got having a vision for the future, which kind of gets back to, I think, what Tiffany was talking about from the one group where you have a goal. So what's the vision, the goal? People are treated as individuals. I recognize some people excel at juggling a lot of tasks. I realize other people like to be focused and don't like to multitask. Encourages development, recognizes people, and I've sometimes gotten kickback in terms of, well, if I recognize this person and I don't recognize this person gets mad, and then the rest of the team gets. If you stay focused on identifying the specific behavior or action that the person took, the incident, the impact, you're going to derail some of that. However, you can't prevent it all, but you'll end up derailing some of it when you specifically identify the contribution that you're recognizing. The supervisor fosters trust. I have worked in organizations. I have seen in organizations where supervisors pit coworkers against each other. what for is my question. But they do. So fostering trust, doing what you can, encouraging coworkers go talk to someone about an issue, as opposed to allowing them to vent and not solve the problem. Cooperation encourages thinking about problems in new ways, is clear on values. So if my leader is clear on values and walks the talk, certainly goes a great distance for me. Our current department chair I would take her anywhere with me. And this whole reorg, thank goodness she gets to stay our department chair. So I feel that sense of safety. Granted, she doesn't have that much control over things that are happening, but at least I feel protected within what she can protect, and supported. I guess even supported more than protected. Instills pride, and then inspires me by being highly competent. And highly competent doesn't mean you have to do the job perfectly and absolutely better than everyone, but at least you're smart enough to know when you can't, who to ask for help. That's kind of how I like to look at it. So that one looks at the psychological safety. So what can you do to ensure coworkers are supportive of each other? What can you do to ensure leaders, or if you're in a leadership position, that you demonstrate some of those behaviors that support psychological safety? So here's the next question as I toss you into your breakout rooms for 8 to 10 minutes. Is what ways can you create an environment of psychological safety? One thing I didn't tell you, which I guess I might have done that by design, but toward the end of your handout, there are some suggestions for these questions. So if you're sitting in your breakout room and you're like, I don't know what to say, it can kind of give you some ideas to kind of springboard on, if that helps. So with that, I will go ahead and put you in your breakout rooms. Or I guess they're open. You guys can go to your own, right? Yeah, go ahead. Same breakout room, same thing, just different topic.
How do you go to that other room?
Oh, it's not open. Hang on. There we go. Now I opened it. Sorry.
For staff meetings is we have to start with being nice to each other before we can work together as a team to move forward. And if there's going to be maybe some backstabbing or I'm not sure what I'm looking here for. Renee, you probably help out a little bit, but if there isn't an understanding that we're not going to be able to move forward if we don't get along.
I
So
think, oh, go ahead.
I think for the recorded version, I apologize. I think you might have missed that last welcome to from a breakout session, which is where people came back and talked a little bit about psychological, safety. So we just talked about maybe getting to understand where your employees are, meet them where they are, figure out what motivates them. And then the other aspect of what someone brought to the conversation was he is, let's see. He is encouraging everyone to take part in rewriting a part of the handbook and the manual. So he's working on demonstrating the strong leadership by trusting others to bring their knowledge, skills, and abilities to the table and using their ideas and opinions to write the handbook. So that was pretty much that. And then I reviewed a little bit about the psychological capital and how to build hope through goal setting. Through goal setting, if you set the goal and then you identify the strategy that you're going to use to achieve that goal, then look at the potential obstacles you may encounter and then write down how you plan to get over those obstacles to ultimately achieve the goal. That increases your level of hope. Psychological capital is one way to measure the psychological availability that is needed for employee engagement to occur. So, and psychological capital in the handout on page 7, it's broken down into 4 different areas: self-efficacy, optimism, hope, and resilience. So that's essentially what we talked about there. So they're in breakout rooms right now for about 7 minutes left, and then I'll resume the recording. All right, welcome back. That was your last breakout room. Okay, so what were some conversations this time about psychological availability regarding optimism, hope, resilience, self-efficacy?
Renee, I forget, so you talk.
So one of the big things that we talked about was doing follow-ups. So, things that you have talked about, discussed, implemented, going back 6 months later and following through, have things gotten better? What are your views now? How are you feeling?
Yeah, that's great, because so many times, even if it's like pulse surveys or climate surveys, or somebody comes to you with an issue, that follow-up is, I would say, rarely if ever happens. So yeah. And that goes back to psychological safety too. That makes me feel more secure that my boss, my manager, whatever, is following up with a discussion we had. Good.
Yeah, here at the city of Centerville, as Jody was talking earlier about, making sure that the employees have the correct training and the correct tools is very important. We do, every year our employees get a performance evaluation, and even whether they're full-time senior staff or if they're a part-time person, they're given goals for the year. And you don't just want to set their goals and then wait a year to say, hey, you didn't meet your goals. So here at the city and here at Benham's Grove, I sit down with my staff quarterly and I'm like, hey, how are you progressing on your goals for this year? Are you going to make these goals? Is there something you need help with? Do you have the right tools to reach your goals? And that's important because that way, that they know that you're still interested, that you're concerned that they're going to be able to make their goals for the year and that they're contributing. And I think I've noticed over the last couple of years, I think they feel better about the fact that I don't just wait for a year and say, hey, you know what, you did great with this goal, but you know what, you didn't meet this goal, but we didn't discuss it throughout the year. Right. So if you have to stay on top of it and monitor what's happening with their goals throughout the year.
Well, and I think when I teach performance management too, that it becomes more of a check-in and a conversation than it is an annual review. So when I would say your annual performance review should never be a surprise, it should be an ongoing conversation. So the problem is people in managerial positions are juggling a million things and held accountable for a million things. This having a conversation doesn't necessarily count toward that. So it does, it's just not as tangible. And so, but it's all about building the relationships that you need for people to feel that connection. If you look at what employee engagement is, it's a connection you have to your job, your coworkers, your environment, your boss, and that connection drives engagement. So it's all a part of the puzzle or a piece of the puzzle. It's just not as tangible, which is
something else we're doing here at the city. And they started it with senior staff for performance evaluations. We are now required to write our own performance evaluation before our supervisor does it. And then they take our performance evaluation and then they build upon it. So I've started with my staff and I talked with, the city manager. I said, I'd like to do this with my staff. And he says, that's a great idea. So now my event coordinator and my laborers, even though they're a part-time person, they're going to write their own performance evaluation first and then give it to me. And then I'm going to go through it and I'm going to build upon what they talk about, where they feel they are. So it gives them a sense that they're actually being taken seriously and that, we're looking at how they feel about working for the city and then the job that they do. So I like the fact that we're now letting them write their own performance evaluation first.
So this will be the first time that you've implemented that process?
This year will be the first time for the employees.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But I've been doing it for a couple of years now where I have to write my own evaluation first.
Yeah. We've been doing that at Wright State for quite a while. So, so if you go, so what else? So I'm sorry, I think the other group didn't talk. Regarding, did everybody talk? Okay. Right. I think I'm thinking in my head and I kind of lost track.
Okay.
No, both groups talked.
Okay. All right. So I think I was thinking of examples and then I'm like, okay, we don't want to go too far over time. Okay. So if you go back and you look at the page, I'm going to say it's page 4. It's the one that's got the measuring employee engagement. It's got your 2 tools. On the left, you've got how you measure engagement, and on the right is the antecedents or the things that can lead to engagement. All right, I want to make sure I'm recording. Okay, so if we look at that, so these are 4 questions I like to ask about yourself about engagement. So on the left-hand side is how do you recognize engagement? It's focus. It's I give my job responsibility a lot of attention. I believe in the mission and the future. And so to what degree do you believe, how would you see yourself as being engaged? So do you feel that you're engaged? And if not, or if you think it could be better, if you look over to the right, that's the Gallup Q12. Are there some indicators on here that if they were to occur, you would feel more engaged? For example, if you had people on your same peer level that were more committed to quality work, would that help? So if that's the case, what could you do differently? What could you do to encourage that to happen? Might you go to your boss directly and say, "Look, I'm having some concerns that that not everyone is necessarily as committed to the job as they potentially could be. Could we do some things? Could we maybe paint a broader picture, a greater vision? Can we help people feel as though they make a solid contribution to the goals we're trying to accomplish?" So, what are some things, if you're not engaged, you could do? And then, then look at this list and look at other people. Are other people possibly not engaged? If so, look to the right. Are there things in this column that I have control over and could do that could potentially change that needle of engagement? Now, with that being said, that's just an individual's performance. That's just you doing something. When we talk about the individual, we talk about management, and then we talk about the organizational structure. So in your case, Randy, what you identified was an organizational wide attempt at performance management, right? So that's something that's not just instituted, in your case, you're doing it, but instituted by one person, but the organization as a whole is saying, we think this may help with something, right? So as you're looking at engagement, what could be done that could help with something? I know some people have done like the strengths finders or just a basic personality fun activity, so you can recognize what people bring to the workplace as opposed to while they're doing their job, because sometimes you just get into talking about tasks and jobs and responsibilities, and you don't kick back and laugh a little bit, or you don't try to do things that aren't related specifically to your job. But that can help with coworker relationships. And then there are some questions too. If you're too overwhelmed at work, who can you talk to in terms of maybe you're experiencing burnout as opposed to engagement. Am I adequately challenged? Maybe part of my issue right now with engagement is that I just don't feel very challenged. And I remember years ago, my mom was marketing director, and she used to say, "Well, I haven't seen my boss Andy in like 2 weeks." She goes, "I guess I'm doing something right. Be nice to know," And I'm like, "You are," she won this statewide award and all this. And she goes, "Well, I guess, but all I'd like Andy to do is come and sit down and talk to me for a little bit." And I was like, okay. So, and then am I enthusiastic and passionate? I mean, sometimes people just aren't really passionate about what they're doing anymore. So one of the suggestions for sense of meaningfulness, and it's on one of the back pages, is it's called job crafting. So sometimes people have kind of outstayed their specific role. Now, I know in some, you were talking fire, you have certain classifications. I know that's a little different, but in some jobs, you can do some different things. For example, one of the companies I was working with, their line manager for a production line, she was great at it, but she's like, "I like doing things like event planning," which is not in her job description, right? So they ended up giving her an opportunity to run the 5K that raised money for their organization to give back, right? So she got to do that while on the clock and running the line she did for production, and that boosted her level of engagement. She felt a little bit more passionate. She wasn't running the 5K all year long, 80% of her job, but she got to do something, and senior management recognized that and gave her something that she got to do what she enjoyed doing. It fed her passion, and it made her appreciate senior management more and the mission of the organization. So those are some things, what could I change? What could I do differently? If I'm looking to move into more administration within higher ed, what can I do about that? Maybe I can ask to shadow someone. Maybe I can, so there's some steps that you could take to increase your level of engagement. So, and there's a lot of stuff I think that I've given you here in this information and with all the questionnaire or the statements, but hopefully it gives you a place to start. If you go back and you look at the model, Kahn's model, if you were to look at the model there, where do you think your workforce tends to be strong? Do you think people have a strong sense of meaningfulness? Or do you think they are really safe in terms of their relationship with you if you're in a position of authority, or coworkers? Do they all tend to get along? And then psychological availability. Maybe they're lacking some of the mindset to be engaged, that maybe just a little encouragement could help with. I know one of the things we joke about in our team at Wright State, every time a news article comes out, we're like, we just like each other so much. We just want to stay together and work because we enjoy each other, right? So we have that psychological safety piece amongst ourselves. And then obviously the sense of meaningfulness is big. So here we are. So what other comments or questions do you have regarding the material and what we overviewed? I'm pretty much done with the content now, so we still have 15 minutes to fill up, but it's not necessary unless you, have some questions.
So all of this information on the handout is like the con model and everything on here too?
No, I can send you, I can give Jody the link to the.
That would be, that would be great. Because I'd like to be able to share, because we always, whenever we take these courses, I usually sit down with the assistant city manager and the city manager, and because they want to know, they encourage us to do this.
Right.
So I'd like to be able to share some of this information with them.
Absolutely.
We actually also do what we call a lunch and learn, where a member of staff will pick a topic, and it would be finance or public works or whatever, and we invite staff and we invite any employee who wants to come, where they can come, bring their lunch, and get to hear about something that's going on. So I would like to be able to share some of this information with some of the other employees so that maybe they can help do that in their areas too, that weren't able to take the course, and at least give them a general idea of what we learned today and what we can do to help them in their departments. So I'd like to be able to share some of that information with them on what I learned today.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad that you find it valuable enough to pass on.
Well, we do, and actually, we've had some really good discussions, and the new senior staff, they really encourage that, and it's been a real change with the city, and it's been a very positive change that each department's not just out in their own little world. We're all part of the same organization, so it's important that we know what's going on in other areas of the city, so that it's not just Benham's Grove against Yankee Trace or against Public Works. We all know what's happening in everybody else's area. So it's fun to learn and fun to share the information with each other.
Nice. Excellent. Excellent. All right. So hopefully, and I'll see if I can send it just as one file, I will. But typically I have to do a link to my Google because it's kind of big, the file. Okay. Either way, you can have it and use it and pass it on, and that'd be great. And some feedback too on this I'll get from participants and discussion is, so a lot of this stuff is about building a relationship with employees and coworkers, and what about authenticity, right? And I'm always like, don't be somebody you're not. Don't all of a sudden, and people joke about, don't all of a sudden say, hey, I just took this class. Oh, hey, Jody, you're great. Anthony, you're amazing. Don't all of a sudden, because your credibility is going to go into the toilet, right?
Exactly.
Figure out, given who you are, what you bring to the table, and make this yours, as opposed to all of a sudden, look, I went to this course for 3 hours and look what it got me, Sure. Sit back and reflect on it and think, what pieces make the most sense in my world where I am that I could apply. So.
Awesome.
So that's pretty much all I have. Anybody have anything else? Thank you for being here. Thank you for participating in your small group.
We were a small group today.
Yes. And I could have kept it in like this large group, but when I'm kind of out of the room, people talk more. So
we're afraid.
Right.
Well, thank you very much, Brenda.
Really, Brenda, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Jody.
Thank you guys. Thanks for joining. Hey, Brenda, I was going to say, I think, well, there's some other training going on today, safety trainings for some of the cities. So